Tell us, Liz, what is your definition of sacred feminine? Because that's a huge part of our discussion today, as well as your work overall.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, we can just take a little moment and laugh at the absurdity of trying to define the divine, right? It's like so silly, impossible. But
that
yeah,
which can't be spoken of is what the Tao says.
right.
It's the
But
zero. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, the
Mhm.
Tao, that's a whole other conversation we could have.
Mhm.
There's a whole lot of feminine juice to that, right? But I think that there are certain ways in which I have found it really helpful to think about this sacred feminine. So rather than like say this is a whole and complete definition,
Mhm.
I would, when I talk about her, I always start with the fact that she is a historical fact. And the reason I start with that is because I'm thinking of myself. I was still a product of this logical, rational world.
Proof.
And
You want
yeah,
tangible
yeah,
proof. Yep.
I didn't want just the woo woo stuff. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
show me something real here. And
Mhm.
so she is very, very real. There's just a mountain of historical evidence that supports that. You can even find the clues in, you know, the things that the church men were railing about with witches in the early Middle Ages. What they're yelling about is what the sacred feminine was, you know. So there she
Mhm.
is. She's hiding right there. She's hiding in nursery rhymes. In
Mhm.
some places she's really hidden. In other places, again, if you look at more indigenous traditions, they've got oral traditions that pass down this for deep respect of the divine feminine that, you know, white colonialism has like ignored, but in their culture it's still there. So she's there, and it goes back like, you know, I mean, as far as we know, it goes back 30, 40,000 years.
Yep.
There's actually evidence that's been found that's pre Homo sapien. So we're talking 150,000 years, female
Mhm.
figurines. That's pretty wild. That's like pre
Yeah.
Neanderthal.
Mhm.
So I think that's important to know, though, that we're dealing with something is real. It is not just, uh, you know, like if you woo
A
woo or whatever.
concept. Yeah.
Right. Which I'm down with all the woo woo. Like, give me all the woo woo. I'll take all the facts and all the woo woo. I have no problem with any of it. But she's real. Like, that's something I feel like is really important for people to know. And also that she's a living thing. There's a way in which we can talk about the divine feminine that makes her sound like she's dead. And I think in certain
Yeah. Never thought
traditions,
of it like that.
yeah, like, yeah, it is true. For
Yeah.
my European ancestors, she was really suppressed and erased, but
Mm.
she's not gone. And you can see this in traditions like all around the world. I think even the way, I mean, a very obvious one to me from my own tradition, I'm not Catholic, but the way people honor Mary.
Mhm.
Mary's the goddess. I mean, she's just
Mhm.
the
Yep.
goddess. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about it.
Mhm.
Um, so, and there's lots of examples of other cultures too, where they still speak with great reverence of the divine feminine. So she's living and she's here, for sure.
Yeah, well, I know in, Catholicism, if I'm not mistaken, Mary represents the goddess and the female form of that's close, but of course it's not equal to the male,
Right.
but in their regard, but that's what she does represent from what I understand.
You
Um,
know, yeah, I don't think they'd say that. I think they would say she's the mother of Jesus, so she doesn't get goddesshood. However,
oh yeah, they wouldn't say that because
right,
they'd call you a pagan. They wouldn't use
right,
that term, that's for sure.
right. However,
Mm.
you know, if you think about the Rosary prayer, um, you know, a part of it is Holy Mary, Mother of God. I mean, what is
Mhm.
Mother of God if not a goddess? I mean, really,
Good point.
wrap your head around that for a while. What is the Mother of God? That is the
Right.
source of all being. It is the
Yeah.
origin, right?
Right,
So
right, right, right,
that,
right. I never thought of that. That's really
yeah.
interesting, Liz. Plus, it just never made sense to me as a kid that, wait a minute, females give birth. They're the ones that bring life into life, and they're the ones who care for life. They're usually the main child caretaker. So why is there no connection between like the origin of life, the source of life, God, if you will, and the feminine? It never made sense to me. And
You
I
know,
forget about the fact that I wasn't allowed to be a altar girl because I was a girl. What did that have to do with anything? And all the priests were men. Like I just didn't. There are so many questions I didn't understand. Like, and no one could answer.
and so good for you for asking questions. It kind of amazes me. And when I think about it, that I didn't have more of those questions. I
Mm,
just didn't understand why God was so violent, and I didn't understand why he was
mm,
killing his kid. But it did not occur to me, which is kind of wild
mm,
given my path now. I don't know. There was nothing that said, hey, maybe you should question this,
mhm,
until much later. But you're so right. It defies logic. And it really goes to
mm.
show that humans might be willing to believe all kinds of things that aren't
Right.
true.